Hello, and thank you for joining us once again for Dojo Live, our last episode of 2016, as a matter of fact. So our final topic is actually be going to touch on some things that are, I guess, perceived as common weak spots for many organizations, which is hiring and recruiting, as well as the employee happiness factor and retention. So here to discuss this with us today are Nearsoft's own people development teammate, Fanny Aburto. Hello, Fanny.
Hi.
Joining us from our Mexico City office. Also, Carolina Gonzalez, who's part of our recruiting team here at our
Hi.
Hermosillo office. Carlos Ponce, as well as myself, Kim. And our guest of honor is Maia, and she's actually told me that I can say this. It's the last name that nobody can pronounce. I'm going to try to slaughter it. It's Josebachvili or something close, right? They don't even have a consensus in their own family. But Maia, she is VP of Strategy, Marketing, and People at Greenhouse.io, and she's got a lot of expertise to share with us today. A company that has seen 8 times growth in the last 2 years, and today was announced as #1 in the country per Glassdoor. So congratulations, Maia.
Thank you, and thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. So as we get started today, I understand that your story is a diverse one, a lot in your background. So please share with us real quickly a bit about you, all the adventures that you've had professionally and personally, and then let's talk about your topic today, which is how to understand the ROI of investing in people.
Absolutely. Well, I have yet to have a good defining story for how I got here, so I'll just give you a couple of the bullet points. But
Perfect.
I studied engineering, had a stint as a derivatives trader on Wall Street for a couple of years. I started my own company, which I ran for several years, and ended up selling to Living Social and then running a few of the business units there, and then came to join Greenhouse, originally as VP of New Initiatives, and have worn many hats, mostly VP of People, and as of last week, now also of Marketing as well.
Wow.
A short stint as a professional skydiver as well. But I don't do that anymore.
Why not?
Very dangerous.
That's true. You start to realize that you're no longer invincible, I suppose, as you've gotten older.
Turn 30 and you're like, oh yeah, maybe that's not such a good idea.
Very, very good. So tell us a bit about Greenhouse. And I mean, 8 times growth, it's very impressive, even envious. So what's the secret and what have you found that to be?
Well, I don't know if it's impressive. It's exhausting, I'll say that. But Greenhouse, we build software that helps other people build better companies. So we started really focusing on recruiting and have since moved on further into the employee lifecycle to helping with onboarding as well.
Nice.
And we have a lot of fun. We really believe in what we're doing, and we think that the whole entire HR industry is changing. And everyone says talent is the greatest asset, but a lot of times they don't really know how to put that into practice. And what we do is build software that helps make those best practices second nature to those organizations. So I started with the company a few years ago, and it's been a really fun ride since.
Nice. And presumably you do not have any developer or technology background. Is that right?
No, I was not quite a coder. I did some coding classes when I was an engineering major in college, but we have a great team of developers, so luckily I don't have to be the one actually writing the code.
Right, and I actually brought that up because the 4 of us, Nearsoft is also a software development company, and neither one of us have a background in tech. None of us have a background in technology, but it's a very fun environment to work in, and you learn a lot. And I asked that on purpose as part of, I think, the human resources, that if you have a dream, you can find a niche and you can be useful no matter where you are and what you can do. So use your talents anywhere.
Absolutely.
So cool. All right, so let's talk more.
Yeah.
I think Fanny had a particular question, something that you actually want to talk about today. Fanny, what was your question?
Oh, well,
Go ahead, Fanny.
I read some of your posts at LinkedIn. So I understand that we can see more clearly with this concept, the relative returns on investment and people contribution to the business. So my question is, do you have a specific process or base data to determine the contribution of each team player? you know, because there is like a huge graphic with the statistics that to know at what time the team player is going to take the decision to leave the company. So do you have some process to determine this per team player?
Yeah, absolutely. And might it be helpful to actually explain the concept of ELTV a little bit before I dive into the answer?
Sure.
Please.
Cool. So some context. You know, I was a derivatives trader before I took on this job. So my whole job as a derivatives trader was to think about ROI, or return on investment. And that's been the framework I really applied to my whole career. Is, you know, growing up, my dad always said, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So how you make those decisions about what to do, that's the crux of, you know, derivatives trading. And then ultimately as a CEO and then a GM of several business units, it's the same concept, which is, if you have a limited amount of resources, how do you want to allocate them so that you get the best return for what you're doing? And so when I first took on the head of people job at Greenhouse, that's how I thought about it. I said, okay, well, where do I want to put my efforts? Where's the best ROI for the business? And I couldn't really figure out a good way to do it. There wasn't this known framework, the same way in sales, you know, that, you know, this is how much revenue you get, and if you do this, you get more, and that's your return. So a big project I undertook with our team here was to try to figure out what is the way that we can talk about the return on the business for investing in people, because we all intuitively, especially us in this game, we know intuitively that there's a great return and that investing in your people is good and we should do more of it. But that alone doesn't help an executive make a decision about where to put their dollars when it really counts. So I really wanted to understand that. And we developed this concept of using the employee lifetime value to figure out where to focus efforts. So let's see, I've never done this like this, but let me try. Got a whiteboard and you still see me, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm gonna draw is start with the employee journey. So if you think about, can you see? How's that working? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
And I want to put this concept. Oh, is it backwards? Oh boy, let's try this. It shows up backwards, right? Should I try to do it?
I think you're seeing it backwards.
Oh, but you guys see it okay?
Yeah.
No, we can see it fine. Thank you.
I was about to try to do it in the mirror and see if that works, but that's even better. Okay, so you've got time and we've got this concept of output. And so time is how long an employee stays with the company. And this concept of output, it doesn't really matter what you have on the y-axis, because I think, to your point, it's really hard to put a number on a person. And I don't even think that's a good way to run a business, because it's so subjective and it's so variable that to say you're an 8.2 versus a 7.3 doesn't actually help anyone. But conceptually, you understand that some employees have more output than others, right? So we can just, like, let's call, I don't know, pick a number. What do you want the top output number to be?
9.
Let's go
9. Okay. And what's the negative one?
negative 9.
Negative 9, yes.
Great. And we could have put 300, or we could have put 2. It doesn't matter. And when you think about a person, an employee, you've got their first day 0. That's their start date. And they start negative because you've invested all these resources into bringing them on board, right? So you've recruited, you've put in recruiting dollars, you've interviewed them, you've spent a lot of time. And I'm going to simplify this. I don't think this is exactly how it goes, but they go, and they get to this point where they become what we would call fully contributing. And a good way to think about that is, like, you know that moment when you start a new job and at first you just feel completely lost and you're not doing anything? And then over time, you start to ask less questions. And one day you send your first big email or you do your first presentation and you're just like, oh yeah, I did something today. You know that feeling?
Yes.
So that's what we call the fully contributing. At some point, you ramp, and you get to a point where you're actually starting to contribute to the company. So then you think about the next couple milestones. So what happens? So then, let's say an employee continues to develop over time. They keep learning and growing, probably a little more slowly than how they did when they first started. And then what you often see is employees plateau at some point. And again, I think in reality, it probably goes up and down a little bit more, but conceptually. And this is what I call the decision to leave. And we jokingly say that's when someone goes on lots of doctor's appointments over the next couple of weeks. Right?
And shows up at the office very nicely dressed.
That's right. Yeah. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, you never wore heels in a suit. But they decide to leave. And, you know, they don't leave at that moment. It actually kind of probably, they're wearing their suit jackets and going to the doctor. And then one day they leave. And when you think about the contribution that that employee has brought to the company, it's basically all of this, technically minus this, right? And this is your employee lifetime value, or your ELTV. It's the area under the curve. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Okay, good. So let's see, I'm running out of color. So when you think about what you can do as a people department and as an organization, what's the ROI you can bring? You can maximize that. And it's not, like, I want to be very clear, it's not about maximizing it for the bottom dollar of the company. I mean, I think that's the side effect. Maximizing ELTV is great for everybody. It's great for the company, but it also is really great for your employees, because the more that they can develop and keep growing, the better for them. So that's how we think about it internally. So the levers you can pull are, they can ramp faster. Can you see that one as well? Maybe I'll use black. That one's a little.
You can see it, but barely.
How's that? So
Better.
So in here, they took this much time. Now they took this much time. They don't have to. So here we have them plateauing. We could actually have them continue to grow at an accelerated rate, right? So not every employee has to plateau. If you keep pushing them and challenging them and investing in them, they can keep growing. And then, you know, oh, the other thing I would add to here is here, they kind of came in at that level. But if you hire someone better, they can actually probably rise to this level just off the start. And then again, and then we have them continue to grow. And then the very obvious one is you can increase their tenure. And now, if you look at all of this, all of that extra ELTV, that's all the extra you got from that employee. And so when you, now as a business, when you're thinking about where to put your investments, if someone just says, you know, I want to really invest in a more data-driven recruiting process, and this is what it's going to cost, I think that's a hard pill for a lot of executives to swallow if they don't understand what they get out of it. But if you can explain, actually, if we're more data-driven about our recruiting, we're going to be able to hire better people. So we're going to get them higher. And we think we're going to hire better people for the job, and we think that they're going to resonate with the job more, and we're going to naturally increase tenure because we're finding people who are more suited for this job, and it's more of a two-way fit. So then you say, okay, well then actually our return is this and this. So I'm not just telling you I want to, you know, be more data-driven. I'm telling you that I want to drive ELTV, and here's how I think I can do it. So that's kind of, in short, the concept of ELTV.
I like the concept. I like the concept a lot. So what types of things now tangibly and actively can a company do to increase that ELTV? We understand the concept. I see the graph, but what is it that spikes? Like, what can we do to, you know, hire faster and better, more effectively, onboard faster, more effectively, and then make people happier more effectively? So what are those secrets?
You know, I think it depends. There's not a one size fits all. It depends on the company and where you'll be most leveraged. If you're a company that isn't going to have any headcount growth for the next year, you probably don't need to invest a lot in hiring. But let's say that, let me start with hiring one because I think it's one of the most leveraged ones. If you are planning on hiring, I'd say that's probably the number one thing you can focus on is really invest in a really good hiring process. And what that means, you know, what we think is we embrace a concept of structured hiring. Have you heard of structured hiring?
Carolina?
Good. Okay. So happy to send you some info on it, but we're big believers in structured hiring. And the idea behind structured hiring is a very process-oriented, methodical approach where you spend a lot of time defining what you're looking for ahead of time. Because a lot of the studies have shown that unconscious bias creeps in, and too often hiring is made on gut decisions. So it's really about creating a scorecard about who you're looking for, what you're looking for, what success looks like. And you start with that, and then you build a set of interviews along the way that test and screen for those set attributes. So if you said it's really important for someone to be able to create statistical models in Excel, then you should have at least one interview where you're actually putting them in a position where they're creating the models that have to create in your work environment and testing that skill. And if you say that I really care for someone to be collaborative, then you can set up a structured interview where you ask everyone the same behavioral questions, like, tell me about a time when you chipped in on a project that wasn't part of your own goals. So setting up a process that really screens for those traits, and then making decisions based on the questions that you asked every single candidate, can increase your quality of hire. That's kind of one. Should I give you one more? Or?
No, sure. Continue. It's very interesting and useful.
Sure. So, that's kind of the first thing. If you don't know where to start, I think that's one of the most leveraged places you can invest your efforts. The second one I would say is really investing in management. Because if you think about how much impact any one person has on an organization, no one has more impact than your managing line. So making sure that your managers know what it's like to be a great manager. They know how to bring out the best in their people. We talk about a manager is basically like, I've heard some people talk about a manager, someone who tries to get their team to do stuff. And maybe in some companies, but I don't think that works for us, certainly. So from our perspective, a manager is someone who removes roadblocks and empowers their people to do their best work. So if you can really invest in teaching your managers how to be great coaches, how to remove roadblocks, how to empower their people, how to help their employees with their career development, that's when you see that rise. So if you can get the quality of hire really high, and you can get your managers to give their employees this trajectory versus this trajectory, I think those are probably two of the most leveraged and most important things I would start with.
Perfect. What about in the case of a company like Nearsoft? We actually don't have managers.
Ooh.
We're a flat organization. Have you heard or you have any experience with that?
Yeah, actually, can I turn a question back to you?
Sure.
Who helps you guys when you feel like you have roadblocks, and who helps you guys when you want help with your career development?
Well, I can do my feedback. I don't know if Fanny, she's part of people development, so she's probably better to address that issue. But a lot of what we do is all based on teams. So each client has their team, and then there's team areas, and we focus on daily meetings. It's very vision based. The company vision for the year is very well laid out for everyone, and then each department also sets their own vision for that year or set period of time that's in line with that company vision. Also very important that everyone's in line with our values. At Nearsoft, we focus on 5 values, which there's long-term relationships, that's commitment, being smart and getting things done. Go ahead, Fanny.
And teamwork.
And teamwork, and leadership. So everything that we do, we base on those 5 values. And then, of course, there are departments such as people development who can help you when you feel like perhaps you're not getting the support that you might need from your team, or you're wanting ideas. And we actually have our own department that's based on career paths. So each, which is a growing department of ours, but where each employee actually is set out their career path with their vision, their own personal talents, and how that can work within Nearsoft's vision and benefit not only you as an individual, but the company as a whole. So I think it's kind of interesting where the things that you said, like removing roadblocks, career paths, it's all the same idea, but taking the managers out of the picture, and trusting the responsibility of each individual.
Absolutely. So I think the output is the same then. It's make sure you're really good at that. So if you're a company that doesn't, I think my understanding is most companies probably have managers. I think you guys, and I know there's lots of companies like you guys, but you're probably in the minority. So everyone who has a management layer, having your managers be really good at removing roadblocks and coaching and developing is great. In worlds like you guys, being great at that stuff. And now it's not the manager's responsibility, it's the people development departments, and it's the culture you're creating where people feel empowered to own it. So regardless of where it's actually coming from, it's being great at the actual thing.
Right. I think the keyword there is, we've actually now recently gone into the debate of, is empowered a positive word or a negative word? So that's actually recent. So we're like, we don't know if we have to use empowerment as a 4-letter word in the future. But the idea is, yes, that you already have the ability to make decisions, and just asking yourself to align those decisions with an ultimate vision. And so that's really, really cool. Fanny, Carolina, from what you've seen, employee lifetime value, what do you think? Questions? Anything else you want to know more?
I do have a question. Because the LTV, it involves like the entire people topics within the company. In your experience and within Greenhouse, you help a lot of companies like to understand and apply this, right? Now, within your experience, which of those aspects have had like major impact? Is it hiring or onboarding or which one?
I don't have a great answer for you, because the answer is it depends on the organization. Because if you're an organization that has struggled with things like attrition, then focusing on the main reasons people leave is a great place to focus efforts. And a lot of times that's management and culture. If you're a company that, I work in Silicon Valley, so there's a lot of venture capital. And so there's this pattern where if you raise money, the next thing you do is go hire a bunch of people. So to the companies that just raised a lot of money and are about to go hire a ton, go invest in hiring. So it really depends on the stage of company you're in. And one thing I just want to clarify that I think I didn't get to is, it's not actually about knowing the ELTV number. We don't actually measure ELTV. We don't put numbers for our employees. We don't say, this is the ELTV we're at today and here's our next goal. It's more a framework to help us think about where we can drive the most impact for the organization.
Is that something that's actually been interworked into the Greenhouse software?
More in theory than actually doing the model, because you're not actually measuring it, it matters less what number to get. But what we do is we do surface a ton of data so that you can understand and you can set targets. So let's say for quality of hire, what we talk about with our team internally is, it's hard to really know quality of hire, but one proxy I have is, how many sources did we talk to? If we only looked at referral candidates for a certain role, or we only posted a job ad in one place and we just screened people from that one place, we're finding the best from a local maximum, right? We're finding the local maximum. But if you could spread out all your sources and you say, well, 25% of our candidates came from referrals, 25% came from ads, 25% came organic, and whatever your breakdown is. Then all of a sudden, when you pick the best and 25% came from prospecting, when you pick your best candidate there, you're not just looking at one local maximum, but you're kind of looking at a broader maximum and looking at a better pool of people. So it's not so much that we say, here's where you landed on your ELTV curve for this hire, but you can see how many interviews did we do from all the different sources, and do we have a wide enough sourcing strategy that we feel good that we were able to pick someone from a larger pool than a limited pool. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I would like to, and I think Fanny, forgive me if I stole a question from you, but I think a really key component, as I just explained about the culture and the structure, or lack of structure rather, of Nearsoft, is the onboarding. And I did see on Greenhouse that your tools and your software also helps with onboarding, which is particularly important at Nearsoft, because that shift in that mind frame of, that empowerment, self-guidance, not having a manager, no one telling you what exactly needs to be done or when it needs to be done by or how to do it. it can really affect, I think, the psyche, and it takes a lot of getting used to for our new employees. So for us, onboarding is a very integral and important process. So what is it that Greenhouse, your software, focuses on for that, or any type of tips or things you might have for people who find themselves in that same situation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So have you heard, I mean, I've heard several, but have you talked to anyone who showed up to their first day of work, not there, but somewhere else, and they forgot they were coming? Have you ever heard anyone happen to?
Like, I'm supposed to be at the office today, that kind of thing.
Well, the other way around, like the manager didn't know that the person was starting.
Oh, with the manager side, like I didn't know that you're even coming in.
Yeah.
At Nearsoft, that's not the case. It's really pretty cool because our IT department actually gets involved with the people development,
That's
and
great.
you actually have your desk, your name tag. This is mine for my very first day. Here we
Right.
go. Right. And a welcome letter, your laptop, your headset, everything you need. So there's none of that like, where do I go to? How do I get this? I don't have a pencil. I mean, it's all right there for you. So it's really, really nice. So I can't say in my experience that's ever been the case.
Yeah.
Fanny, Carlos, Carolina, has that happened here?
I think you guys are in the minority. I didn't think it happened at your company.
No, but in those particular cases, we're like, wait, I'm supposed to onboard someone today? Like, so go on. Let's say, how does that work?
So let's just say that I've heard that happening many times. So, there's two pieces. The first one is the new hire experience. So your onboarding actually starts the day you sign your offer letter. But most companies don't think about it that way. Most companies wait until the person shows up. But really, these couple weeks before you get there are some of the most stressful, anxiety-provoking, and exciting times. So we set up a new hire, well, we help a company set up a new hire experience from day one. So you get access to this portal where you can see the company history, you can see all the different team members, you can see who am I going to join, who's my manager, what are some fun facts about them, or however you want to set it up. So already you're coming into the company feeling a lot more welcome because you understand what's going on.
And I think it facilitates it because part of that stress that you mentioned, it's not only you're onboarding to join a new company, you're tying up all those loose ends at where you're leaving and trying to onboard someone else, and your workload is like double, and then you're like, I'm supposed to be thinking about my future too, and so that's a very, very cool tool.
Yeah, and then the other part that's more on the administrative side for the team, and I love what you said, how the IT team coordinates with the people team. I forget what the stat is, but there's something like, 30 people involved in onboarding a new employee. You have to think about everything that has to happen. So we help coordinate that on the back end to create the experience you want. So rather than have some checklist you're checking off somewhere, every time a new hire gets put into the system, it sends off all the notifications to everyone. So IT knows to get their computer set up and knows what kind of setup they need because we know what kind of employee they are. And whoever's the person's buddy, we love our buddy program. Actually, I just had someone tell me he's been here for 4 months now, and he said he still goes to his buddy, the person who was assigned, to ask questions 4 months later. So your buddy gets an email saying, you have a new buddy starting. Here's when you're going to meet them for lunch, etc. So we help coordinate all the pieces so that from a new hire experience perspective, they feel welcome from the very beginning because all those things are seamless and done on the back end.
I like that a lot. And I think it's really important for Nearsoft too. Like, we really focus on being a family. We actually call ourselves a tribe, teammates, tribe members, family members. One of our littlest family members actually just ran by. I don't know if you heard the footsteps. So it's really, really cool. I think that it helps get that feeling, but in a very well-coordinated way.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes.
Fanny or Carlos?
Yes, I have a question. For example, when the employee reach their total growth in the company, how do you re-engage them to stop the decision to leave the company?
Fanny, you froze for a few seconds, so we lost you. So you might want to repeat your question, please.
Okay. When the employee reach their total growth in the company, so how do you re-engage them to stop the decision to leave? The decision to leave the company.
Yeah. Well, I might have an unconventional answer, which is 2 things. One, sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes someone's had this great contribution and they've gotten what they can out of the company and they've had a really great run and they're ready for their next challenge, and that next challenge we can't offer them here and they want to go find it elsewhere. And we try to have a really healthy conversation with people around that, because I don't think the end goal is, 30 years of tenure for every employee, or even 10 for that matter. It's whatever's right for those two people in that role and that tour of duty. So sometimes it's the case that you have a really honest conversation and you say, okay, I'm so glad you've had the contribution you've had here. I hope we've had the same contribution for you in your career, and I'm really excited for your next chapter. That's kind of one set. The other set is, it's not about the one time. I think if the first time you're having the conversation about how do we re-engage you when they're already decided to leave, they're probably going to leave. And if I ever have, maybe not here, but if I've ever had a manager come to me and said, oh, listen, this person wanted to leave, but I was able to talk them out of it, I usually say, for now, but once you've hit that point, it's kind of hard to get back on track. So the advice I would have there is continuously ask your people. And again, I keep saying your manager, but obviously for companies that don't have management, it's different, but it's whoever's in charge of that conversation. But keep having conversations about, what are you looking for in your career? What are your career aspirations? And how do we tie the work you're doing today to match that? So as long as you're continuing to align the interests so that the growth, that the work that someone's doing is in line with where they want to develop, I think they'll stay for as long as, makes sense for their own ELTV and their own employee journey.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. Like, why would you want somebody to stay if what they really want is to leave, right?
Exactly.
And for their benefit and yours. And I think that's where the people element comes back. Like, you are your people and you want your people to be happy.
That's right.
Of course.
Awesome.
There's something I'd like to ask. I can understand what you're saying from the vantage point of belonging to a software company, and usually software companies are comprised of a lot of people who, just by generation alone, is comprised of a lot of younger people, like in the 20s, late 30s at the most. Now, I'd like to ask you, Maia, what I'm just trying to word my thoughts. I'm a little slower than Kim and Carolina and Fanny. What would you tell those who have been like witnesses? For example, in my case, when I got to the company, I was witness to the company's growth. So because I was literally a guinea pig when it came to onboarding. I came at a very early stage, but also there are other factors like I'm not an engineer. Even generationally, I'm 50, so it's like, okay, I've been lucky enough to witness a whole bunch of things, but then for me it's been like a challenge, and to learn and to keep up to date and such. So what would you tell all those folks, either who are employees or who have companies, and have people like me who are older? What would you tell them to entice them to invest in their own growth at the company? If in some cases they might not be certain, is this worth pursuing? I mean, come on, this guy's, happy. He's been around for a lot of time. So how would you overcome those biases, if I may ask?
Yeah, I think the word bias is a great one here, because I don't think there's any, and I certainly don't believe, there's no fact or difference in someone's age and what they can contribute and how much they can grow in the company. So I do agree some people have a bias that the younger people want to develop more and learn more, but I don't think that's actually grounded in anything. So, it's about the culture of the company. If you're a company that has a culture where you want everyone to develop and grow, those are the people you'll attract, and those are the people you'll invest in. And it's kind of age agnostic at that point, because anyone who really cares about development, self-development and growth will join that company. And so I think it's more about being very explicit about the culture you're creating, and culture being, the values and behaviors, and making sure that the people you bring into that organization exhibit those. And, sometimes I think, again, from a bias perspective, some companies call culture, who we have beers with, would I have a beer with this person? And we're really adamant that that's not what culture is. That's a nice byproduct of working with people you like. But culture is really, do we all exhibit the same values and behaviors? And is that what we want to embrace? And that's super age agnostic.
Cool. Thank you, Maia.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
As VP of People at Greenhouse, what types of activities or what do you engage in order to enhance that culture and create that culture and maintain that culture of Greenhouse? What would you define your culture as, and what do you do to help maintain and create that culture?
Yeah, well, I loved how you talked about culture in terms of values, because that's the same way I would describe our culture is. We are a group of very authentic, effective people. We really value being inclusive and open-minded and customer-focused, and we love collaborating, and we're generally incredibly ambitious. So what we do is things to foster that. So we do it as an all-company level. So it's not about the people team. It's not about the executive team. It's really about the whole company wanting to embrace that. So we have a bunch of different committees that employees join that help push those values. So we have a culture committee, and it's made up of cross-functional representatives from all the different groups. And what they do is they look around the company and they come together with all their shared perspectives to figure out, what are we not doing well? What should we do better? And we have this constant theme of continuous improvement. So they've done things like revamp our all hands meeting to make it more effective and more collaborative for everyone. They suggested that we have an office in New York and San Francisco. We now keep a live stream going for the 2 kitchens. That was something they suggested. So it's really about figuring out what are our values and how can we be better at exhibiting them through this company. And that's something that the whole company works on.
It's fun that you mentioned that, because I think Greenhouse and Nearsoft are very much in line of and have a really close cultural fit in that regard. We don't call them committees; we call them leadership teams. Same concept. Totally. And we actually, one of the projects with our interns was to build a portal joining our kitchens. So that's really, really fun. I like that. I like that a lot. And we too have our all hands meetings once a month. And then we just last week came off of our team building week, which
ours is next week.
All right. Yeah. So we do that twice a year. So it's a really, really fun week. What types of activities do you engage in your team building weeks?
We do a whole bunch of different stuff. The last time we did a team building day, we did a choose your own adventure. So there were a bunch of different activities you could choose from, and there was something for everyone. So there was a biking class, there was a cooking class, whatever it is, stuff that brings people together. And then we generally finish up with a group event or a group happy hour.
So you don't sit around the table, Post-it notes and brainstorming ideas?
Oh, we do that too.
Carlos didn't like that activity.
You got me.
We did that. Fun day. We have a day called Fun Day, and that's when we get out of the office. So the Post-it notes isn't the fun day, but we do Post-it notes.
Oh, that's funny. No, we did have one team building day. It did involve Post-it notes, but the rest were activities. I really like the choose your own adventure, to dedicate a day to that. That's fun. Yeah, ours consisted of a basketball tournament, which was very, very well coordinated, even if we didn't have coordinated people. No, I had a blast. It was really kind of funny. You haven't seen anything until you've seen a bunch of software developers play basketball. But it was really, really fun, and the rest of us were great cheerleaders. So very good. Carolina, Fanny, Carlos, what else do you have?
First of all, I just would like to briefly interrupt to remind the audience that you can send us your questions to our Twitter account, which is right here, DojoLIVE, @DojoLIVE. Just send them over, and I'll read them back to Maya, and she'll respond. And with that being said, I'm going to pass on the mic to either Fanny, Caro. Mic's all yours.
I have one question. How do you include happiness and freedom at work?
Yeah, how do we include happiness and freedom at work? Well, I don't actually use the word happy very often. I mean, I want our employees to be happy, but that feels like a hard thing for me to be able to affect too much. And what I really want is to create a really engaged environment for people. And I think that leads to happiness. But the end goal isn't happy, right? Because I can make people happy by tripling everyone's salaries and saying, we're only going to work an hour a week. So I try to think about how do we create a really engaged environment. And I think that the people we bring into our workforce get happy when they're engaged in their work. So what we try to do.
Our founder, Roberto Martinez, will hear that and he'll be like kissing the monitor of engaged, one of his favorite words ever.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, it comes back to hiring for us. We talk about, we want to hire people. We want to create an environment where people can do the best work of their career. And we want people who want that. And I don't think everyone wants that. I'm sure there's plenty of people who want to come in, punch in, punch out, and then go home. We want to create an environment where you're set up to do really wonderful, great work. And for us, we think that's where the happiness comes from, is if we can create that environment for you and we can set you up to do great work and we can help develop you, that's where we think the engagement comes from. So that's a big focus of what we do around here.
On that hiring process, what are some indicators for you of the type of person who is going to be engaged? Or on the contrary, what are some red flags of like no go? Do you have any of those things in mind?
Yeah, it really does go back to these culture fit interviews. So once you're explicit about your values, it's about being structured about screening for that and being really diligent and rigorous that that's what you're looking for. So, let's take another one of our values, which is open-minded and inclusive. We'll ask a couple of behavioral interview questions to make sure that someone's exhibited those traits in the past. So, a situational question would be, how would you handle this? And I think that's really helpful for certain cases, but it's not very helpful for screening for culture, for for traits, because I don't have to be an open-minded person, but I could tell you the right answer for how would you, respond to this. But if you ask me, tell me about a time when you had a very strong opinion and someone was able to change your mind. Now it's much harder for me to come up with a fake scenario, and I'll do that. And my favorite interview question, just so you know, is, that's great. Tell me about another time. Because I think sometimes it's quite easy to come up with one, but if you're not actually someone who has that attribute as something that's really core to you, you're not going to come up with a second one. So I just gave away a secret in case people.
Yeah, I'm taking notes.
I love that. Yeah, everyone's like, whew, and then.
But let's say you're a very collaborative person, you're going to have tons of examples.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Perfect. Carolina, you're the recruiter here. What obstacles have you come across or things that you would like Maia's expertise on, perhaps?
Well, actually, I think I find it comforting to hear that you're based on your values, and then I believe that everything has to come out of that, like what you're looking for, what you live day by day within the company. Has there been time with, I don't know, a company that's been hard to live by their values that you had to assist or help?
I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced this, but there have been times that we've had some really technically capable candidates. It's been a really hard search. We could have been doing it for a long time. It could be something we really need. And you go through the interview and then you realize that they didn't pass the culture fit interview. And that's when it really comes, honest. And I think those are the times that you really see what you're made of and where you really put your efforts into. And those have been the hardest ones. And I'm really proud to say that our company here at Greenhouse has really stuck to that. And we've said no to senior technical candidates because we thought they didn't exhibit the traits we wanted them to exhibit. Now, that's not always been the case in other companies I've been at. And I think is one of the things that really makes us who we are.
Maia, we have a question from the audience.
Thank you.
And this question came from our fellow Nearsothian who's at the Mexico City office, Oz. Hi, Oz.
Hi, Oz.
And his question is, I think Oz definitely wants to raise some hell with this question internally here, but I think it's cool. So, okay, what do you think about hiring false positives rather than false negatives?
That's a great question. Yeah. So, should I explain that a little? Do you think the audience knows? So, a false
I
positive.
think it's good. Explain it first.
Yeah. So a false positive would be that someone passed the interview and you think they're good, and it turns out that was wrong, and they came into the organization and they're not good. And then a false negative would be someone doesn't pass the interview. You say no. Well, you probably say no. And it turns out they probably were good, but you got a negative, but that wasn't actually a negative. It's really funny. I just had this conversation the other day with someone. If you never hire any false positives, that means you never have a bad hire. There's some good stuff that comes with that for sure. But the downside is you probably missed out on a bunch of false negatives too, because you were so narrow in what you were looking for that, one, and I don't know what the right answer is here. I'll just tell you how I think about it. But for me, I'm okay letting a couple false positives go through the door, and I'm okay to take a chance because I think it actually broadens your horizons, and I think missing out on the false negatives could often be more detrimental. So what that means is you do have to be really good at identifying someone who wasn't the right fit early on and making sure that you part ways in a meaningful way. And I think one more key so that's about setting the right goals from the beginning and knowing what you're looking for, knowing what someone has to accomplish early on. One thing I will say, I think is super important. If you make a bad hire and you have to terminate them, I think it's really important to make sure you treat them really well. And, if your company can afford severance packages, that feels like a really great way to go. And the reason is that the person didn't fail you. You failed them. You thought that they were going to be good for the role, and turns out they weren't. So it's not really fair to then say, oh, you suck, get out the door. That's because you have part of the onus of why that didn't work out. So, again, if you can offer severance packages, great. If you can't, I understand, but at least being really respectful and not just putting all the blame on the person, but understanding that there's an onus that you need to take on as well.
And the learning from that, I think, is really key. I think it'd be interesting. I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we spoke with a man named Perry Thames. It might be interesting for you to actually watch that DojoLIVE. One of the things that really stuck out for me, he mentioned the idea of cultural fit, but trying to actually encourage companies to get off of the cultural fit and also talk about cultural enrichment, which I think is something that you hit the nail on the head there. Like, you miss out on the false negative or the false negatives, or is that what it is? Yeah, the false negatives, because sometimes we just get so, I think, set in that cultural fit that you are just start to build a homogenous workforce, and then that also can impact your innovation. So I like the idea that it's okay to take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but talking about this cultural fit, do you have a specific methodology to recognize that the candidate will be a good cultural fit? Because, okay, we're going to we're going to take the risk, but we want to be, I don't know, a little bit sure that the candidate is going to work, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a specific methodology for this?
For when you're screening them, for once they're already.
Yes, for the screening, or maybe a survey or something. I don't know if maybe during the interview you apply some practice case.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, I think the whole interview is testing that, but specifically what I was chatting about was testing for those attributes and making sure that people have exhibited them and have examples of having done those things. It's generally a pretty good indicator.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the structure of the questions that you're asking.
In a minute, how are we doing on time and questions?
No, I think I personally feel, at least if you need to head out the door, of course, that's we accommodate that. I mean, I feel very fulfilled in our conversation today. Learned a lot, inspired. I think Carolina's walking away. All of us are walking away with something good and new today that we've learned. I don't know. Anyone else have something else to ask? Or you, Maia, any last words of wisdom and closing and encouragement that you might have with us?
I mean, all I'll say is I think that the impact on this stuff is so important. And I didn't even realize that until I started really working on this ELTV concept, just how much the impact can be for an organization. And I'm so bought in now. And I'm happy I can send you guys so that you can share it if you want. a couple of case studies we did and some white papers on it that
Nice.
you see the ROI, and it's really great. So look, I think it's worth investing in people from a human perspective. We'll all enjoy our work better if we have that kind of environment. And you can also make the business case for it. So it's kind of a two wins.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you with that. I think please do send us those white papers, and of course, anything and information or links that you would want find valuable for people, and we'll go ahead and put that up on our website along with access to this talk in the future. Carlos, anything else?
Not right now for me. I mean, I was just listening to what Maya was saying, and a lot of images conjuring my own experience, and it came to my head. And there are this thing about ROI in when investing in people is a whole new concept that a lot of folks out there should become aware of about the actual benefit of and business decision. As a business decision, I think it's wise, but a lot of people should be more aware of this, especially here in Latin America. So we're going to make sure that we're going to do our best to spread the word with the DojoLIVE about what you're doing, and especially about this concept. So Maya, as far as I'm concerned, I have a big thank you for you for having agreed to be here with us today, and I'll send you the link with your entire episode on our website. After we're done with this, and I'm very thankful for having had you here
Likewise.
in DojoLIVE.
And thank you all for the great questions and the great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Right.
And I hope we'll be in touch. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Have a
I'll
great
be in your webinars.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Take care.